All right, let me ask you a question. You were talking about treaties, rules, and regulations. Do you have any indigenous treaties that you'd like to talk about?
You know, there's one that I just learned about. I didn't know about it. There's a group called the Moors. And
Where are they from?
Well, they were in Morocco, and they had some pretty powerful treaties. They were the first country that had a treaty with the United States after the Revolutionary War. And this group actually is taking credit for bringing humanity through the Dark Ages. They were the ones that had the Arabs in Spain. They were the ones that had all the knowledge. That was how we got out of the Dark Ages. It was through them. They had kept the light of human information burning. And of course, there are a lot of other indigenous groups too. But that was the one that I just learned about. I was excited to learn about them.
Very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it's very interesting. I think Tara has a couple questions for you. I see her biting at the bit in the back there.
I had myself muted so I wouldn't have all the distractions back here. Wow, I'm learning. Well, I thought I was smart about an hour ago. This is very interesting.
Hello, my name is Dwight Bush. I am deeply honored to serve as United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Morocco. My relationship with Morocco goes back to 1990, when my wife Antoinette and I visited on our honeymoon. We started in Casablanca, went down the coast to Agadir, and across to Tordoudan, Marrakesh, Meknes, Fez, and Rabat. The beauty of the country, the diversity of the people, and the richness of the culture profoundly affected us. Those memories have become part of our family narrative, and they inform my enthusiasm to serve our president as U.S. Ambassador to your great country. Morocco was the first nation to recognize the United States in 1777, and we have been friends with no country longer. Our relationship is far-reaching, with close cooperation on a broad range of issues, from regional stability and security, to educational and cultural cooperation, to business and development. I plan to draw on my experience in corporate and multilateral governance and my business and finance background to promote trade and commercial opportunities between our two countries. Morocco is on a positive path, and we will continue on that path together, building opportunities for millions of Moroccans to play productive roles in their country's bright future. I hope to hear from you all soon. Ma salama, au revoir, goodbye.
The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the first Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed, or Federal Reserve, is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words, "In God we trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the President is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the President is President of the Corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C. city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the...
And I saw the one that Master Farad wore. I seen his. The hat that he had on the first time that I saw him, it had letters on it. And the letters was just like the letters you see here. Excuse me. F, J, E, and I. It was at the corner to fit down on the hat. So you could read it, F, J, E, and I, just like here. That was the first time that I seen him with the hat on, like this. Now, there was people before he came. that belonged to the Moorish Americans by Noble Drew Ali. They didn't have this on it, the moon and the star. It was blank. It was blank. But the hat was red. They wear black ones and red ones. And the moon, I believe, on one of them, they didn't have it, but they would stamp literatures that they had to send out to people to come to their meeting. The moon was not on this side, it was on this side. So we asked Master Farad concerning Mr. Noble Drew Ali. He was a good man.
Yes, sir.
I call all of them good that try to tell our people something for self.
That's right.
All of them good. So that means freedom, justice, equality, Islam. Now, the reason that they could not handle it is because they didn't know it.
Listen.
They would have told it if they had known it, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
So, Brother Noble Drew Ali, as Master Farad said, he was a smeller of Islam.
Right.
He didn't have enough knowledge in Islam to keep going with it like it should be because of the name that he named his organization. At that time, we called it Moorish America.
That's right.
One common thread is evident. No nationality equals no rights and no human value. No nationality equals no rights, so there's no protection, and no human value. So you're not even considered a human being if you don't have a nationality. This is why after the slavery era, there was this man from North Carolina who was dark-skinned, but he was born in the Cherokee tribe. And he came and started telling people that you're not Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian, because those names were given to slaves by slaveholders. So if we know that we're not Negro, black, colored, the next logical question is, what are we? If we're not what they say that we are, then what are we? And this is where Noble Drew Ali comes in, because he gave us everything that it takes for us to be saved. And we didn't deal with that. We didn't follow the program. So here we are. You gotta come all the way from Canada to do lectures talking about you're Moors, when black leaders should have been told you this. Anybody who put you on to knowledge of self, that's the first thing they should have told you. Yeah, you know that you're Moors? And then go talk about all the other stuff. The first thing they should have told you is that you're Moors. Why? Because they were taught that. Elijah Muhammad used to go to Moor Science Temple meetings. Fard Muhammad used to go to Moor Science Temple meetings. Marcus Garvey got visited by Noble Drew Ali when he was in Atlanta prison before he got deported. But Garvey, I think, we're going to bring that up. They're going to say, oh yeah, Moors are lying, no such thing or whatever. Right? Nation of Islam, they're going to be telling, oh yeah, nah, Moors are lying. Even though 2014, Farrakhan at Savior's Day had a big speech about Noble Drew Ali, talking about how great Noble Drew Ali was, how much, you know, he's the first person to bring Islam to America and all that. But how come they don't honor him? How come they're honoring Fard Muhammad? When Farrakhan told them that Noble Drew Ali brought Islam to America, anybody who says that they're Islamic in America, they owe supreme allegiance to Noble Drew Ali. But they don't go there. Because as soon as they go there, that means they lose all their popularity.
Right? Okay. I'll leave that up there. And let me say a little bit about the significance of this information as it pertains to the organization known as the Moorish Science Temple. In 1913, a man by the name of Timothy Drew Ali, also known as Noble Drew Ali, began teaching in Newark, New Jersey, that African Americans, who were then calling themselves Negro, Black, and Colored, should more properly see themselves as Moorish Americans, should more properly consider themselves as already having been in the Americas, as well as linked to the African continent. His contention, of course, met with a lot of opposition, because people were saying, well, how can you prove, what do you mean Moors? 1913, how can you prove, what do you know about any Moorish links? Well, two things that we can surmise from this. One is, as I tried to make clear already, this term Moorish was recognized as being a reference to, if you will, a phenotypically, meaning of physical features, a phenotypically Africoid people who primarily were known to occupy the regions of North and Northwest Africa. But the truth of the matter is, when you consider this issue of phenotype, you find people in West Africa who look like people in Central Africa and South Africa and East Africa. So we know that there's obviously a mixture of peoples. But why would he then say, well, you can actually identify yourself as Moorish? Well, one reason is because, as I pointed out before, evidence suggests, whether it's Abu Bakari II of Mali, an African Muslim who leads an expedition into the Americas, and at that time in the 14th century, the European world would have recognized that particular kingdom as being within the larger Moorish Empire. And if we find evidence, as people like Van Sertim and others have found, of this African Muslim presence, and if you find people like Robert Beverly II, who was one of the early historians of Virginia, writing in the early 1700s, like 1720, 1715, and this man is talking about the Indians of Virginia, reminding him of the peoples of Ethiopia, Morocco, and Libya. He likens their food to being similar. William Penn likens the people that he saw in Pennsylvania, what becomes Pennsylvania, as looking like the Jewish people of London. And most of those Jewish people just happen to be Sephardic Jews. Most of those people had left and have been expelled from, guess where? Moorish Spain. So for him to be making these connections obviously indicates that these people must have had, phenotypically, and even talks about their culture, their mannerisms, describes their children. And these folks remind me of the Jews back in London, who basically are Moorish, Sephardim, or if you will, African Jews. So all these things are suggesting this presence. So for Noble Drew Ali to make that statement in 1913, it was pretty profound, considering that most people didn't know about Van Sertima because he wasn't born yet. Most people didn't know about Leo Wiener, even because Leo Wiener didn't write his book until the 1920s. And this was part of, his oral tradition. Drew Ali was telling people that this was the case. He referred to the Americas as Northwest Africa and Southwest Africa, at least in the official literature. Which means that while Africa is home, so is America. Right. So next time somebody says, why don't you go back where you came from? Say, I'm where I was.
Minister Malcolm, I'd like to know why you place so much emphasis on calling the freedom struggle among Afro-Americans in this country a struggle for human rights rather than civil rights.
Well, most of our people don't even know the meaning of civil rights, and by not knowing what it is they're actually trying to get, it has eluded us for the past 100 years. Civil rights is supposed to mean citizenship. When you have civil rights, you have citizenship. When you have citizenship, you have civil rights. And if the 22 million Afro-Americans were actually citizens of this country, it wouldn't be necessary to pass any kind of additional legislation to include us in the Constitution. If you notice, whenever the people come here from Europe, they can come here from Poland, which is a communist country. They don't need any legislation to make this Polish person a citizen. They don't need any additional civil rights legislation to make the refugees from Hungary who come here citizens. They don't need any additional legislation to make anyone who comes to this country a citizen. But when it comes to the rights of the black people who are the descendants of slaves, then immediately new legislation is necessary. So this right here implies that when the Constitution was written, in some way or other, it must have excluded those of us who were slaves at that time. And because we were excluded from the Constitution when it was originally written, today they have to amend it in order to include us. But if you notice, the Civil War didn't include us in the Constitution. Had the Civil War Constitution, we would be citizens today. Had the amendments even to the Constitution actually included us, we would be citizens today. If the Supreme Court desegregation decision way back in 1954 was sufficient to include us into the jurisdiction of the Constitution, all of our problems would be solved today. So there's something about civil rights that makes it almost impossible for us to get it. So you have to know the difference between civil rights and human rights. As long as our people are begging for civil rights, or they are labeling their struggle for freedom, justice, and equality under the label of civil rights, then what they do is leave us in the jurisdiction of Uncle Sam's courts. And it's actually Uncle Sam who is guilty of all of the violation of our rights that have taken place in this country. So when you go to Uncle Sam to try and get some kind of redress over civil rights violations, you're taking your case to the man who's responsible for the violation. So the only way our people can really get some meaningful results, it has to be taken out of Uncle Sam's hands and taken into a world court. And the world court that has been set up to listen to the complaints of human rights violations is in the United Nations. Human rights are international, and civil rights come within the jurisdiction of the countries where these rights are violated. Some people may wonder why our brothers from Africa and Asia have not spoken out more boldly or without compromise on the injustices that the 22 million Afro-Americans experience in this country. They can't speak out. As long as these injustices are labeled by us as civil rights, then this remains a domestic issue, and none of our people from abroad, because of protocol, can become involved in Uncle Sam's domestic problems. So all the civil rights groups have to do is expand the struggle from civil rights to human rights. And once it is expanded to the level of human rights, then this puts us in a position to charge Uncle Sam with violating the UN Charter on Human Rights. We can take it before the United Nations, and other nations of this earth can then side with us and indict Uncle Sam for the mistreatment of 22 million Afro-Americans. The very fact that the struggle of the black people in South Africa, or I should say the injustices that have been experienced by black people in South Africa has come before the UN, or the injustices experienced by our own people again in Angola has been brought before the UN. Even the oppression of the Hungarians has been brought before the UN. the plight of the Jews in Soviet Russia, and there's only 3 million of them in Russia, has been brought before the UN. Well, then why hasn't the problem of the 22 million Afro-Americans come before the United Nations? It has not come before them because the leaders of the civil rights struggle don't understand what civil rights actually amount to. When they are mature to the point where they can see that their present struggle has kept them under Uncle Sam's jurisdiction, and Uncle Sam is not morally capable of solving this problem, then they will shift it out of the courts of Uncle Sam and take it to the courts of the United Nations on the level of human rights, and we'll get some kind of meaningful results. As long as we keep it at the civil rights level, we alienate the support of our brothers and sisters in Africa and Asia. But when we shift it to the level of human rights, we have the support of billions of black, brown, red, and yellow people from all over this earth behind us.
The United States is a great world power and has in the past exercised a lot of control and power within the United Nations. So how can you expect to wage a successful battle against such a powerful country in a world court?
Well, whenever you believe in what the United States has taught us concerning democracy, which means one voice, one vote, this is good, because in the present world setup, world governmental setup, as is represented by the United Nations, each country there has one vote, which means that no matter how wealthy a nation is, it only has one vote. And no matter how poor a nation is, it still has one vote. So the ballot actually equalizes the poor man and the rich man. Back when the United Nations was set up, it consisted largely of white nations, because most of the dark nations were then colonized and weren't independent. Since the dark nations have gained their independence and have emerged on the scene, today in the UN you have more dark nations who are in a position to vote in a bloc than you have white nations. So that we have a situation now where the grouping together of the dark nations who formerly were colonized has given them enough political power to offset the military power and prestige of these mighty white nations of the West. And it is their support. It is only in the United Nations, where everyone has the ballot, where everyone has equal vote, that the plight of the black man can be given a just hearing, and the weight of the dark world can come down on our side and balance the scale on our side. But whenever you take it into the white man's court, you never will get justice, because the white man is the guilty one who committed the crime in the first place. It's like taking your case from the wolf to the fox to take it to Washington, D.C.
I don't think I wholeheartedly go along with that, Mr. Malcolm. I have some appreciation for your discussion as regards to the human right and the civil right. But here in America, as a band of Negroes, I think the most progressive thinking that we could possibly attain is civil rights. This is the thing that we want. This is the thing that we hope to get. This is the thing that we're going out to fight for. Without our civil rights, the human rights, and the rest of the elements are non-entities as far as
human rights come before civil rights.
That may be so, but the civil rights are an important factor.
You can never get civil rights until you have human rights. Human rights represent the right to be a human being. Whenever you are respected and recognized as a human being, your civil rights are automatic.
But if we get civil rights, we are human beings.
No, you have to get the recognition of human rights first. This is why people can come here from Africa and Asia and immediately are able to benefit from what the Constitution stands for, because they are recognized as a human being when they touch the shores of North America. But the black people in this country, all of our human characteristics were destroyed by slavery. Our language was destroyed. Our history was destroyed. Our culture was destroyed. And then the white man taught us that we were savages in the jungle and living at a subhuman level. And for this reason, when they put the Constitution together, they classified our people as 3/5 of a man, which meant subhuman, not a complete human being. And once our human characteristics were completely destroyed, this gave them justification for treating us like we were animals. And it also justified their selling us from plantation to plantation like you sell a horse and a cow and a bag of wheat. Why, George Washington himself historically is on record as having sold or having traded a black man for a keg of molasses, which shows you he didn't regard that black man as a human being. If the black man's human rights had been respected, he never could have been a slave here in America, and if his human rights had been restored by the Emancipation Proclamation, automatically we would have been citizens right after the Civil War. So we must be regarded as human. Our human rights must be respected before we can ever be regarded as citizens and our civil rights be respected.
IAMHH. I am the Mahdi to the Shia Muslims. I am the Yeshua or Joshua to the tribe of Judah. I am the Pahana, or the true white friend to the Hopi. I am the Lucifer or morning star to the Freemasons. I have many names from many different religions, all awaiting my appearance among you. I have known the Spirit was part of me, within me. I have known the reason why I've been allowed by God to live when the neurologist predicted death for me long ago from my spinal injuries. I am here to warn humankind that the end of days is upon the world. God willing, this one will end soon, so the next one may emerge. I am here to lead God's armies. They have shown themselves across the sky openly these last 2 years. Most recently, these balls of fire have appeared over Washington, D.C. I now call out to them to please come to my aid soon. God willing, the angels of light, the electric gin of smokeless fire will descend upon the earth. I am here to stand between you and the ultimate truth which is revealed to each of us by the reflecting God on Judgment Day. I alone have the understanding and knowing of the nature of your existence in relationship to God. I alone have to bear the burden of the truth, to stand alone. I know the loneliness of a single being upon the huge plate of the universe who can only reach out to God. I am not God nor a son of God. I am only his servant on this earth. I am also here for my own personal reasons. You can believe me or think me insane, but I must now reveal these secrets regardless of how you take the news and what you decide to do to me. I know the Christians who have been so tragically misled and misguided as to call the prophet Jesus the Son of God will think me evil, that those that blaspheme and make God's servants into gods will take their misguided beliefs to their illogical conclusion and call me Antichrist. Nothing could be further from the truth. Men killing their own families, women driving into the ocean or drowning their children in the bathtub or shooting them for being mouthy. Zombie attacks where faces are eaten or men are disemboweled themselves. Or even a man, an army veteran, charging and being allowed into the White House waving a knife, screaming, "The atmosphere is collapsing," while the Secret Service man turned off the intruder alarm. You can deny the outright tyranny of our government sponsoring Al-Qaeda. The United States Central Intelligence Agency has recently given M1 Abrams tanks, Humvees, guns, rockets, and missile launchers to terrorists. Obama has given them money. Then these terrorists are falsely called Muslim. The once holy Egyptian name of ISIS is blasphemed, while this army of Araman and Angar Manu rampage across the desert, killing Muslim, Christian, and Jews alike. All of that at the behest to our government to give us the excuse to bomb the sovereign BRICS-aligned nation of Syria. While our neo-Nazi-backed coup of the Ukraine threatens to completely destabilize Europe and Jews flee to Russia of all places for safety. I see the signs of the end, and I'm here to warn you, all of you. You can deny your God-given duty to employ the solution afforded us by the Founding Fathers to revolt against this tyranny, against the oligarchs who have overrun our government. You can sit back and watch while the puppet Caesar sitting in the White House guts our military leadership. Over 500 officers, senior level, have been fired in the last 2 years alone. While your local police forces are militarized and every alphabet agency arms itself to the teeth against us. I'm not the one with a gun fixation, sir. Our government is. But I suppose the Pinellas County schools really needed those assault rifles, and the Department of Homeland Security really needed those 1.5 billion hollow point man-killer bullets. So sit back while the NSA listens and records every one of your electronic communications. Ignore the false cell phone towers being reported to be installed across cities across America. It's not like they can be used to be mass-scale ELF weapons on us. I see the signs pointing to this end. You can deny it while World War III rages and makes its way here, while the plague rages across Africa and makes its way here, while the Air Force's weather weapons destroy our minds and the atmosphere and create out of control and natural disasters. You can forget the price of tyranny as it kills millions of Muslims as it kills American citizens like Anwar al-Awlaki and his son with hellfire missiles for only speaking the truth. Forget the price of tyranny while kids are tortured in secret programs like MKUltra. Forget the price of tyranny while families like mine are torn apart. You can follow the path of greatest sins, chosen or feigned ignorance and apathy, while my wife and sons pay. Don't worry, everybody's going to pay soon. But I will not forget what was done to me and mine. What was done by the wicked, and more importantly, what was not done by good people.
Islam. My name is Earl Chisholm. Some of y'all know me as Self L. I wanted to give a quick, brief synopsis. First of all, I want to rise giving praises to Allah and honors to his holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who is responsible for these lessons that I'm getting ready to cover, who put a pamphlet together of the 18 missing years of Jesus. And he brought us these secret lessons so that we can save ourselves. I want to talk about actually just one part of the post that I think it came from Jeff Fort Bay or Brother Chief Malik, depending on who you ask. I want to give you a brief overview of what one of the verses are in the post, and if you want to know more, we can demonstrate some more, because it's important that you young brothers and sisters know exactly where these lessons come from. They're divine. They're sent from Almighty God Allah. This is not a criminal organization's lessons. This is for everybody who thinks that their condition can be better. This is divine. These lessons are for all those who love Jesus. And this is the Holy Quran of the Moor sign symbol of America that has the logo circle 7 on the front of it, divinely prepared by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And what I have on is called Affairs. It's the national headdress of the Moorish American man, and it has it's a red cylinder-shaped headdress with a 12-inch tassel on it. And if you know something else that you measure things with that's 12 inches, you get a ruler, and they go, and this tassel swings 360 degrees, representing 360 degrees of knowledge and truth. But let me go to one part of this lesson, because I want to make this real brief. And if you want to know more, I'm here to give you what Allah blessed me with. All right. Okay. It says that to talk much is the foolishness of folly. And we go to this book here, the Holy Quran, Circle 7, and we go to chapter 26, and it's called The Holy Instructions of Unity. And when we go to chapter 26, verse 4, it reads, "The pride of emptiness is an abomination, and to talk much is the foolishness of folly. Nevertheless, it is part of wisdom to hear with patience and with impertinence, and to pity their absurdity." So what that means is that when you think that you know something, a lot of people think that they know when they speak like they know, but they don't know. And it's an abomination to be prideful about something that you really don't have an understanding of. And to talk a lot is the foolishness of folly. To keep talking is foolish. But nevertheless, if you hear somebody who says they know, but you know they don't know, and they always talking, it's part of wisdom to hear with patience and impertinence and pity their absurdity. So it's part of wisdom to listen to what you're hearing and pity them, because they don't have anything. They think they know, but they don't know. This is a small, it can't even really be measured. This is a small part of the Holy Quran of the Moor Science of America, Circle 7. These lessons are for those who love Jesus and who wants to set their house in order to get their life on the right path. If you want to know more about this and you want me to explain more from my portion of understanding as a member and a person who's been studying Moor science for 23 years, and then we go a few years prior to that when I found these lessons in the BPSN. Holla at me. Self-ill, self-L, self-resurrector, whatever you want to call me. Earl Chisholm. Peace.
And I want to show you this also. This is a report from the newspaper regarding the convention that was held in 1928. Oh, I better start touching on some of the prophecies. You know what I'm going to do? Hold on. What I want to do at this point is I want to start touching on some of the prophecies that the prophet made regarding what would happen if his warning is not heeded. And you can see now, in light of current events, it's going to make a lot of sense. You might want to turn that light back on over there. In light of the current events, this is going to make a lot of sense, a lot of things he's saying. For instance, this was taken from a book published by Olive Ill called The Oral Statements and Prophecies of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And this is a prophecy. This book here, it's almost like hadith. It's almost like a form of hadith amongst the Moors, because it's collected from various people who knew the prophet, who was around at that time. It's just taking different statements from them of things that the prophet said and done and so on and so forth. So the analogy would be in Islam, Orthodox Islam would be a hadith. So naturally, some things have more weight than others. You know, it hasn't been weighted as of yet. And in Orthodox Islam, the hadith have been weighted so that certain things are given more authority than others. But this has not been weighted yet. One day probably it will be. One of the things the prophet said there is, quote, he said that one day there's going to be a holy war. Now what do you hear being taught about so much right now? All this talk about jihad, holy war. Well, you're going to see the prophet, now keep in mind now, the prophet speaking in 1928. This is 1928 now. At that time, I don't even think Saudi Arabia, the whole oil thing wasn't going yet. It wasn't going on yet. All you had there was desert sheiks, poor desert sheiks roaming the desert at this point. And it was right around this time that the big oil company stepped up in there and said, we'll develop your oil, we'll do the process, and we'll make you rich. And that's why you see all them countries are filthy rich right now, was because of this deal that was made right around this time. So you didn't have all this talk about jihad, holy war, or whatever against America, or all that stuff at that time. He said one day there's going to be a holy war. Prophecy number 168 says, now check this out, it says, quote, one day you are going to look out into the streets, and the streets are going to be filled with men with turbans and fezzes, and the highways are going to be blocked. Check out what else he says. He said, quote, keep this in mind, this is if his warning is not heeded. He said, you are going to be saved in a conflict that cannot be told in words. He also told the Moors, he said, one day the European is going to let you down. You are going to have to put up a 90-day supply of food to last you until your brothers come to rescue you from the east. So right there he's telling you, start preparing. Because he also said here also, he said that, he said here, if I were you, this is prophecy number 198, if I were you, I will get ready before you are made to do so. He's saying, get ready now. Don't wait till the last minute, till you're forced to. He said, start getting ready now. Put up your 90-day supply of food. Have your beans, have your stuff stored up. You never know what's going to happen. People think, you know, sometimes we think, oh, everything's fine. Don't be caught off guard like those ones like in Noah's time. You know, there was party and everything. They said, oh, look at Noah, he's crazy. Building a boat. I mean, and not to say that this happened literally, but the symbolic understanding of it, they were partying. Here he is building a boat on dry land. They thought he was a fool. They was having a good time. Here a man building a boat on dry land on top of a mountain or whatever. But then when the water started rising up, they was all banging on the boat, let us in, let us in, let us in. We don't want to be caught off guard like that. So prepare. As far as I'm concerned, every family, every household should have a survival kit. A basic survival kit of food that you stored up, flashlights, tents, you name it. I got a little kit, I got a number of kits, I got all kind of stuff in there. Stuff that I went to like campus supply stores and got, because you never know if you may even be out of doors. You might not be able to stay up on the home. So you gotta remember, America 85% of America is pure wilderness. The cities only take up 15% of America. So you got to understand, the first thing that's going to go is the cities. When you have outbreaks of smallpox, isn't it ironic? You remember the last meeting? I was speaking about religious freedom. I was speaking about how if America said mass vaccination of smallpox, how we could say we don't want to get it under religious freedom. Right after that, didn't the president announce mass smallpox and vaccination, everything? So it's just showing you we got to stay in tune with the times. The prophet also said, quote, prophecy number 57, he said, quote, watch the newspapers and listen to the radio. I am going to make the European tell the truth. So he's saying in the last days, listen carefully. What you hear in the newspapers, what you see on the news. He said, because he's going to make them tell the truth at that time. And if you listen carefully, you could distinguish the truth from what they're saying. He also said that, this is deep, because he said this in 1928 before anything about smart bombs. You heard about all the smart bombs with laser accuracy. He said that, quote, one day bombs are going to fall so that they won't miss a spot as wide as my shoe. He said that you are going to need a basement to hide in, almost like bunkers. And so right there, he's describing smart bombs right there. He's saying that it's going to be so accurate that it's going to land in space, won't miss a spot even as wide as his shoe. So he's already predicting this, all the technology, smart bombs, all that stuff. Another prophecy he says here, he's predicting FEMA before FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And FEMA has a series of plans. It was signed into law, a series of executive orders that are signed into law that if the president declares a state of national emergency, FEMA takes over all railroad, transportation, food supply, everything, and everybody has to register with the Postmaster General, where you will be allotted either to a work camp or detention center or whatever the case may be. That's why you notice the Postmaster General, the post office in every neighborhood. So what better mechanism to round up everybody and to assign them where they are to go than through the post offices, all right? And that's through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's why when the riots broke out in Los Angeles, and the president came on and said, I declare a state of emergency for Los Angeles, and riots broke out of the cities, I thought at that time they were going to elevate it to a state of national emergency. So at that time, right around that time, that's when I started getting my survival kit together, because I knew it could be on at any moment. That's the same time I started going out to the woods with Rudy Duckett, Brother Abdul Hakim Rashan, so in the different herbs, survival foods, all that, because I wanted to know how to be able to survive in the woods if I have to, and know the foods that's available in the winter as well as the summer, because the prophet also said this also. He said, and this is deep, and this is something I always thought about. He said, quote, number 163, quote, pray that you don't have to make your flight in the wintertime. And it goes on to say that we should pray that we do not have to make our flight from destruction at the end of time in the wintertime. The destruction is going to be bad enough without the added problem, ice and snow, to make our situation more difficult. Knows that always their wars, they plan them right around that same time, right around wintertime. The last Gulf War was right around wintertime. Right now, it's right around wintertime when they planning it. You see? So this way, if things break down, people ain't going to have an outlet in the wilderness type of thing. It make it easier for them to round you up because you'll be kept, indoors more or less. You see? So you got to understand that you got to really know and understand survival. Like they say, I used to put out a survival manual called, it says survival. On the bottom it says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You see what I'm saying? You got to be ready. Sometimes when I go out in the woods, I walk through the woods with my children sometimes, and I said, while we walking through here, let's formulate a meal. And so we walk and I say, all right, there goes some mustard garlic, there goes some of this, there goes some of that. I'm actually trying to compose a meal as I'm walking, because I say to myself, it may come a time where I'm stranded. I don't even have access to my survival kit. I might have to know how to improvise and survive right there. Go out with my children, we make lean-to shelter, just get in practice, just for fun. Because a day may come where you might have to live like that. I asked my sons one day, I said, if you was in the woods and you had to cook something and you don't have no pots or pans, how would you cook it? I said, let's say you want to boil water. I said, how would you do it? And they were thinking, they were like, all right, You can't make a pot out of leaves or something like that, because the minute you put it on the fire, it's going to burn up. You can't make it out of wood, it'll burn up. So how would you do it? You know? And they thought about it. I said, this is the way the elders used to do it. They dig a hole, line it with something, you put the water in.